Hi, I'm Sean Carlock. Welcome to Send at 12. Today we're going to talk about backups to our atmospheric condition units. Now, almost everybody is running a Kestrel or similar atmospheric condition calculating device, or reading device rather. Now, some people will have that built into their laser rangefinder where it reads temperature, pressure, angle, several other things, and gives you a shooting solution. Regardless of what you're using, you need to have a backup to that. If I'm running a rangefinder that has the ability to calculate those things for me, that's great. I still have my Kestrel as a backup for several reasons, but that being one of them, that I can still read temperature, pressure, even if I have an issue with my calculations out of my rangefinder. I have other things I can correct for that, as long as I have a good idea what pressure, temperature, and a few environmental conditions are. Now, if I'm running a Kestrel strictly for that and it dies, you smash it, you lose it, you leave it at home, whatever the case might be, and you find out that you're out hunting and you no longer have the ability to use your Kestrel to read conditions, you need to have something else. The two biggies are pressure and temperature. That really, for the most part, is all that matters to most people. Temperature, we can guess pretty well at. Maybe your GPS has a thermometer in it. If you have a GPS that has a thermometer, it'll also tell you altitude. If you're in a place where you can get out with them, which most of the time we are, we now have the ability to run temperature and what the standard pressure would be. Now, that's not as accurate as having a way to read station pressure, but it is more accurate than going, gee, I think it's 26 inches of pressure. Now, as we get into that, the other thing you can do is just flatly guess. If you have the Kestrel and you've been using it all along, the thing I like to do, and I've written articles about this before, is I like to use the Kestrel to train myself. Not only do I use it to train myself what wind speed is like and what things look like at certain wind speeds, I also train it to say, hey, you know, we're at X pressure. And I do that by saying, hey, I think the elevation is about this much. And we know that standard lapse rate for pressure is 1 inch for every 1,000 feet. So if we know that it's 29.95 at sea level, it's going to drop 1 inch for every 1,000 feet you go in elevation. So if you're at 4,500 feet, you can make a pretty educated guess on what the average pressure is going to be. Again, that's an average. It's not rocket science, it's not exact, but it is a lot better than saying, well, I don't know, let's just dial up this much. The other thing we can do is guess temperature. And you'd be surprised with a little practice how close you can get to saying, boy, I think it's 55 degrees, you know, instead of just looking on a chart or looking on some kind of app that is set at a regular pressure temperature and running with it. We can fine-tune our solution a little bit by making a good educated guess if we have nothing else. Now, the last thing is, if I'm in a place, and I've talked about range cards before, if I'm in that place where I hunt often, or at least often enough to make a range card, I like to leave a little strip at the bottom of the range card, and I will put in what the elevation there is for my shooting position, what the average pressure is, and what the temperature is for given times of the year on the average. Now, if I have that average pressure, and we know there's a storm coming in, we can bump that up a little, we can drop it down a little depending on what the weather conditions are doing. Same thing with temperature. If you write down that the average temperature there during hunting season, during the day is X degrees, it's 40 degrees, and you got up this morning, there's frost on the ground, well, we know it's colder than 40 degrees, right? So we need to modify that temperature in our ballistic calculator accordingly. But we can take a pretty educated guess at it. Again, these are things you have to practice, and you have to go out and test them to see what your effective range is when you don't have the exact data that you're used to when everything's working. Stay tuned for Send It 13, where we will go over what happens or how we can correct for our ballistic calculator when we don't have our normal ballistic calculator, how we back that up.
Send it. Did you see the hit?